Lieutenant John Carter looked out through the viewport as the Earth Alliance vessel, Horizon, entered orbit around the blue-green planet of Zithar. The swirling oceans covered nearly 80% of the planet's surface, with only scattered islands and archipelagos breaking through the endless waters. This was his first diplomatic mission to a newly contacted species, and excitement tingled through his body. "Nervous, Lieutenant?" Captain Alan Foster asked, stepping up beside him. "Excited, sir," John replied. 4 years of xenanthropology studies, and now I finally get to apply it." The captain nodded. "Just remember to follow protocol. The Zitharians, our new allies. We don't want to create any incidents." John straightened his blue uniform. "Of course, sir." 6 hours later, John stood on the main island of the Zitharian capital alongside 5 other crew members. The warm, humid air filled his lungs as he breathed deeply. The scent was strange, a mix of salt water, sweet flowers, and something else he couldn't identify. The Zitharians were taller than humans by about a foot. Their skin was pale blue, with patches of bioluminescent patterns that shifted colors based on their emotions. They had webbed hands with 6 fingers and large, dark eyes that seemed to take in everything. Most wore simple robes of a material that resembled silk but shimmered like water when they moved. Lisa Wells, the communications officer, leaned toward John. "They're welcoming us with their highest ceremonial greeting. This is a good sign." The Zitharian leader, who had introduced himself as High Priest Zelmora, bowed deeply to Captain Foster. His voice was melodic, almost like singing when he spoke. "Welcome, Earth people. The eternal tide brings you to our shores at an auspicious time. The alignment approaches. You honor us with your presence." Captain Foster returned the bow. "We thank you for your welcome and look forward to learning about your culture and sharing our own." The formal greetings continued for nearly an hour. John tried to pay attention, but his eyes kept wandering to the strange buildings around them. They seemed to be grown rather than built, with curved walls that resembled giant shells and coral-like structures that reached toward the sky. Even more interesting were the lights he noticed in a grove of twisted trees beyond the meeting area. The lights pulsed in a rhythm that seemed almost deliberate. When the formal welcome finally ended, the Zitharians led the Earth delegation to a large hall for a feast. Fish and strange fruits were served on plates that looked like giant shells. The captain and other officers were seated at the main table with the Zitharian leaders, while John and Lisa were placed at a side table with younger Zitharians who seemed curious about the humans. "Your skin does not change colors," said one young Zitharian. "How do others know what you feel?" John smiled. "We show emotions with our faces mostly, and we tell each other with words." "Fascinating," the Zitharian replied, its skin flickering with patches of yellow light that John guessed meant curiosity. As the feast continued, John found his attention drawn again to the strange lights he had seen in the grove. They were visible through an open archway, pulsing more rapidly now. None of the Zitharians seemed to be paying attention to them. "Lisa," he whispered, "do you see those lights in the trees?" She glanced over. "Yes, probably some local wildlife." "Focus on the dinner, John. This is important." But the lights seemed to call to him. When the servers brought another round of food, John excused himself, claiming he needed fresh air. Instead of heading to the main entrance, he slipped out a side door and walked quickly toward the grove. The twisted trees looked like nothing he had seen on Earth. Their trunks spiraled upward, and their leaves were long and thin, almost like kelp. As he got closer, he realized the pulsing light was coming from a clearing beyond the trees. John carefully made his way through the grove. The ground beneath his feet changed from packed earth to a soft, spongy material that muffled his footsteps. The air grew more humid, and he could hear a soft humming sound that seemed to match the rhythm of the lights. Pushing aside a curtain of hanging vines, John found himself looking at a small lagoon. The water glowed with bioluminescence, and around its edge stood 7 Zitharians. They wore different robes than those at the feast. These were dark blue with silver patterns that matched the glowing symbols floating above the water. John realized he was witnessing some kind of ritual. He knew he should leave, but curiosity held him in place. The Zitharians were singing in their language, their voices creating harmonics that made John's skin tingle. In the center of the lagoon, crystals of different colors rose from the water. Arranging themselves in patterns. He took a step back, planning to return to the feast before anyone noticed his absence. His foot came down on something hard that made a loud cracking sound. John looked down and saw he had stepped on a small stone carved with symbols similar to those floating above the water. The singing stopped. All 7 Zitharians turned toward him, their skin flashing with bright blue and purple lights. "I'm sorry," John said quickly, backing away. "I didn't mean to interrupt. I'll go now." But the Zitharians didn't seem angry. Instead, they stared at him with what looked like shock. The tallest one stepped forward, its skin now pulsing with golden light. "The star-touched one comes," it said in the Zitharian language, which John only partially understood from his studies. During the alignment, the prophecy. The others began to bow, their heads touching the ground. John stood frozen, not understanding what was happening. "Wait, there's some mistake," he tried to explain, but the Zitharians were now approaching. Him, still bowing, the tall one reached out and touched John's forehead. A strange tingling sensation spread through his body, and for a moment he thought he could feel the entire lagoon, every drop of water, every crystal as if it were part of him. "John? John, where are you?" Lisa's voice called from the trees. The Zitharians parted as Lisa pushed through the vines into the clearing. She stopped, her eyes widening at the scene before her. "What's going on?" she asked, looking from John to the bowing aliens. Before John could answer, the tall Zitharian turned to face Lisa. Its skin was now a brilliant gold color that lit up the entire clearing. "The prophecy fulfills," it said in broken English. "The star-touched one arrives during the alignment ceremony." The alien gestured toward John. "All hail the new regent of the eternal tide." The other Zitharians began to chant, the water in the lagoon swirling in response. The crystals rose higher and arranged themselves in a circle that resembled a crown. Lisa stared at John. "What did you do?" "Nothing," John whispered back. "I just walked in and stepped on a stone." 2 Zitharians approached with a robe made of the same shimmering material as the symbols above the water. They draped it over John's shoulders while the others continued to bow and chant. "The captain is going to kill you," Lisa muttered. This was supposed to be a simple diplomatic mission. John swallowed hard as the tall Zitharian placed a circlet of crystal on his head. "I think diplomacy just got a lot more complicated." Captain Alan Foster paced the conference room of the Horizon, his face red with anger. John sat at the table, still wearing the shimmering robe the Zitharians had placed on him. Lisa stood nearby, occasionally translating messages from the planet. "Surface, let me get this straight," the captain said, stopping to glare at John. "You wandered away from an official diplomatic function, stumbled into a sacred ritual, and now they think you're their new king." "Regent," John corrected quietly. "Regent of the eternal tide, and I didn't mean to—" "I don't care what you meant to do." Foster slammed his hand on the table. "Do you have any idea what kind of diplomatic nightmare this is?" "Earth Alliance. Just established relations with these people." Dr. Samantha Powell, the ship's xenobiologist, entered the room carrying a tablet. Her short blonde hair was messy, as if she had been working without a break. "Captain, I have some information that might explain the situation," she said. Foster waved a hand. "Please tell me you found a way to fix this mess." Samantha placed her tablet on the table. It showed scanning results from John's medical examination after returning to the ship. When Lieutenant Carter stepped on that ceremonial stone, it sampled his DNA, she explained. "I've analyzed the data from the stone that we brought back. The Zitharians weren't just performing a random ritual. The alignment ceremony happens once every 300 years to select new leadership." "And they pick leaders based on genetic markers?" Lisa asked. Samantha nodded. "Yes, but here's the interesting part. John's DNA has some unusual markers that somehow interact with Zitharian biotechnology. The system recognized these markers as royal indicators." John touched the crystal circlet he still wore. "So this isn't a mistake? Their system actually chose me?" Technically, yes, Samantha said, though it was designed for Zitharian biology, not human. The interaction is unexpected but real. The captain dropped into a chair, rubbing his temples. Great, just great. So we can't just explain this away as a misunderstanding, a message alert sounded. Lisa checked her communicator. Captain, Grand Minister Veshla of the Zitharian Royal Council is requesting permission to board the Horizon. He wishes to speak with the new regent. Foster sighed deeply. Permission granted. Let's at least hear what they have to say. An hour later, John found himself facing a delegation of 7 Zitharians in the ship's formal meeting room. Grand Minister Veshla was taller than the others, with deep blue skin that rippled with silver patterns. His eyes fixed on John with an intensity that made the human uncomfortable. Lieutenant Carter, the translator device rendered Veshla's melodic speech into English. The alignment has chosen you. This has not happened in all our recorded history. A non-Zitharian has never been selected as regent. There must be some mistake, John said. I know nothing about your people or how to rule them. Veshla's skin flashed with yellow lights. There is no mistake. The alignment cannot be questioned. It is the will of the eternal tide. Foster leaned forward. Surely there's some provision in your laws for unusual circumstances. Lieutenant Carter is an Earth Alliance officer with duties elsewhere. The regent's duty is to Zitha, one of the other council members said firmly. To refuse the role would be to reject the eternal tide itself. Such an act would bring great suffering to our people. Lisa, who had been studying Zitharian language and culture intensively, cleared her throat. If I may, Captain? In Zitharian belief, the eternal tide is not just water. It's the flow of life and time itself. The region is seen as the physical embodiment of that force. If John refuses, it would be seen as a cosmic rejection, Samantha finished. Based on their belief system, it could trigger a major religious crisis. John felt the weight of the situation settling on his shoulders. How long does a regent serve? Veshla's skin rippled with blue and green lights. Until the next alignment, 300 cycles from now. John's eyes widened. 300 years? I won't live that long. This is precisely why we must discuss alternatives, Foster said firmly. For the next several hours, the humans and Zitharians negotiated. John found himself caught between duty to Earth and an unexpected responsibility to a planet of aliens who believed him to be divinely selected. Eventually, Veshla made a proposal, perhaps a temporary arrangement. The regent must return to Zithar for the coronation ceremony. Then we can discuss how to proceed. Foster looked at John. It's your decision, Lieutenant. But think carefully. John nodded slowly. I'll attend the coronation. We can work out the details afterward. The next day, John found himself in a small transport vessel descending to the Zitharian capital with Lisa accompanying him as translator and cultural advisor. The city looked even more impressive from the air-spiraling towers of living coral and massive dome structures that reflected the sunlight like pearls. Are you sure about this? Lisa asked as they approached the landing pad. No, John admitted. But refusing could damage relations between Earth and Zithar forever. At least this buys us time to find a solution. The landing pad was surrounded by thousands of Zitharians, all with their skin glowing in patterns of gold and blue. As John stepped out of the transport, a cheer rose from the crowd, their melodic voices creating harmonies that seemed to vibrate the air itself. Miriadal, a young Zitharian scholar assigned as John's guide, bowed deeply. Welcome back, Regent. The palace awaits you. The palace turned out to be largely underwater. John was led to a massive structure that extended from an island into the ocean depths. Most of it was submerged, with only the uppermost levels above water. Do not worry, Miriadal assured him, seeing his concern. We have prepared air-breathing chambers for you throughout the royal residence. Inside, the palace was even more magnificent than John had imagined. The walls seemed alive, glowing with the same bioluminescence as Zitharian skin. Water flowed through transparent channels in the ceiling and walls, creating an ever-changing pattern of light and color. Miriadal led John to a large circular room with a view of the underwater city stretching out below. Strange fish and other sea creatures swam among the buildings, which appeared to be grown rather than built. "This will be your royal chamber," Mirialto said. "The coronation will take place tomorrow at the Sacred Lagoon." As Mirialto left, John noticed a figure watching him from a doorway across the room. The Zitharian was darker than the others he had met, with patterns of red and purple across its skin. It stared at John with unmistakable hostility before disappearing into a water-filled passage. "Who was that?" John asked when Lisa entered the room a moment later. "Dartvin," she said quietly. "I've been hearing things from the staff. He's the leader of a traditional faction who believed he would be chosen as regent. He's not happy about an alien taking the position." John looked out at the underwater city. "Great, not even crowned yet, and I already have enemies." Lisa touched his arm. "We'll figure this out, John. Just play along until Captain Foster and Earth Alliance can find a diplomatic solution." John nodded, but as he watched the alien sea creatures swimming through the strange city, he couldn't shake the feeling that his life had changed forever. The weight of the crystal circlet on his head felt heavier with each passing minute. The coronation ceremony took place at dawn. John stood at the edge of the sacred lagoon wearing ceremonial robes that felt like liquid silk against his skin. Hundreds of Zitharians surrounded the water, their skin glowing with patterns of gold and blue. The crystals that had risen from the water during his first visit now hovered in a circle above the lagoon's center. "Remember to bow 3 times before entering the water," Miriatal whispered beside him. The young Zitharian scholar had spent the previous evening teaching John the basics of the ceremony. Then walked to the center where High Priest Zelmora waits. John nodded, his heart pounding. He glanced at Lisa, who stood with the other Earth representatives. Captain Foster had remained on the horizon, still working through diplomatic channels to resolve the situation. The Zitharians began to sing, their voices creating harmonies that made the water vibrate. John took a deep breath and stepped forward. He bowed 3 times as instructed, then stepped into the lagoon. The water was warm and seemed to embrace him, making his skin tingle. He walked slowly toward the center where Zelmora waited, holding a staff made of the same crystalline material as John's circlet. The high priest's skin shimmered with patterns of light that matched the floating crystals. "The eternal tide has chosen," Zelmora announced in the Zitharian language, which the translation device in John's ear converted to English. "The star-touched one comes to lead us through the next great cycle." John reached the center of the lagoon. The water came up to his waist, soaking the lower half of his robes. Zelmora touched the staff to John's forehead, and a wave of sensation washed through him. For a brief moment, John felt connected to every drop of water on the planet, as if the oceans themselves were speaking to him. "I accept the responsibility given to me," John said, repeating the words Miriatal had taught him. "May the eternal tide guide my actions." The floating crystals descended, arranging themselves into a crown that settled on John's head. The sensation of connection grew stronger, and John gasped as images flashed through his mind: underwater cities, strange creatures in the deep ocean, and glimpses of what seemed like Zitharian history. When the ceremony ended, John found himself seated on a throne in the great hall of the palace. Zitharian nobles came forward one by one to pledge loyalty to the new regent. John tried to remember the names and faces, but there were too many. "You are doing well," Muriel said during a brief break in the proceedings. "Many are impressed by your dignity." "I'm just trying not to make mistakes," John admitted. "How much longer will this last?" "Several more hours," Mirialto replied. "Then you must judge your first case as regent." John blinked in surprise. "Judge a case? No one told me about that." Mirialto's skin flickered with apologetic yellow patterns. "It is tradition. The first day of a new regent always includes judgment of an important dispute. It demonstrates your wisdom." "But I know nothing about Zitharian law or customs," John protested. "You have been chosen by the alignment," Miriatal said simply. "The eternal tide will guide you." John wasn't so sure about that, but he had no choice. When the loyalty pledges finally ended, two groups of Zitharians entered the hall. One group had greenish-blue skin, while the other had deeper blue coloration. They positioned themselves on opposite sides of the room, their skin patterns showing. Clear agitation. Grand Minister Veshla stepped forward. Regent, before you is a dispute between the Eastern Coral Province and the Western Current Province. For generations, they have shared access to the sacred reef of luminance. But recent storms have damaged much of the reef, and both claim exclusive rights to the remaining healthy sections. John listened as representatives from both provinces presented their arguments. The sacred reef apparently produced rare coral with unique properties used in medicine and technology. Both provinces needed it, but there wasn't enough for both after the storm-damaged odds, they argued. John noticed Darjvin watching from the side of the hall, his skin flickering with red patterns. The hostile Zitharians seemed to be waiting for John to fail. John thought carefully. He needed a solution that would be fair but also show he understood Zitharian values. I have heard your arguments, John finally said. The reef belongs to neither province exclusively. It belongs to the eternal tide, which gives its bounty to all Zitharians. He paused, seeing uncertain reactions. Therefore, I decree that the healthy sections will be divided equally between your provinces. But before harvesting begins, both provinces must contribute resources and workers to restore the damaged sections. The reef must grow again, not simply be used until nothing remains. Eh? Murmur went through the hall. Miriatal's skin flashed with surprise and approval. Even Veshla seemed impressed. The regent has wisdom, the leader of the Eastern Coral Province said, bowing. We accept this judgment. The Western Current Province representative also bowed in agreement. As they left, John noticed Darjvin slip out of the hall, his skin now a dark purple that John couldn't interpret. Later that evening, John sat in his chambers with Lisa and Miriatal. His head ached from the weight of the crystal. Crown and the strain of the day, you did well, Lisa said. Captain Foster will be impressed when I report back. Indeed, Miriatal agreed. Your solution to the reef dispute showed true understanding of our ways. Many who doubted are now reconsidering. John removed the crown and set it on a small pedestal. I just applied common sense. Both sides had valid points, and the reef needs protection for the future. Perhaps that is why the alignment chose you, Miriatal suggested. A new perspective can see solutions where tradition sees only conflict. John was about to respond when a sharp pain shot through his head. He gasped, pressing his hands to his temples. John? Lisa moved to his side. What's wrong? Before he could answer, strange images flashed through his mind, underwater landscapes he had never seen. Creatures in the deepest ocean and what seemed like memories that weren't his own. I'm fine, he said as the pain subsided. Just tired, I think. Miriatal watched him with concern. The bond with the crown grows stronger. It is normal for new regents to experience ... adjustments. Adjustments? Lisa asked sharply. What kind of adjustments? The royal technology connects the regent to Zithar itself, Miriatal explained. It enhances certain abilities and perceptions. It is a great honor. It's changing him? Lisa looked worried. Dr. Powell needs to examine you, John. John nodded, still shaken by the experience. I'll contact the Horizon tomorrow. For now, I need rest. After Lisa and Miriatal left, John stood at the large window overlooking the underwater city. Lights moved through the depths as Zitharians swam among the buildings. He touched his temples where the pain had been. The strange sensations were fading, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something within him was changing. Movement caught his eye, a dark shape swimming quickly among the buildings. For a moment, John thought he saw Darjvin's distinctive coloration, but the figure disappeared into the depths too quickly to be sure. John turned away from the window. Whatever was happening to him, whatever plots might be forming against him, he would face them tomorrow. Tonight, he needed sleep. But as he lay down, strange dreams of ancient seas and forgotten voices followed him into slumber. 1 week into his unexpected reign, John woke from another night of strange dreams. In these dreams, he swam through the deepest parts of Zithar's oceans without needing to breathe. He communicated with ancient sea creatures and saw the planet as it had been thousands of years ago. The dreams felt more like memories than imagination. He sat up in bed and noticed something strange on his arms. Faint blue patterns similar to Zitharian skin markings traced along his forearms. They glowed softly in the dim light of his chamber. "What's happening to me?" he whispered, touching the patterns. They felt warm under his fingertips. A soft chime announced a visitor. John quickly pulled on a long-sleeved robe to cover the markings. Before calling "Enter," Lisa walked in, carrying a small communication device. "Captain Foster wants to speak with you. Earth Alliance is sending a specialist team to evaluate the situation." John nodded and took the device. The captain's face appeared on the small screen. "Lieutenant Carter," Foster said formally. "How are you holding up?" "I'm managing, sir," John replied, careful not to mention the strange changes he was experiencing. "The Zitharians seem pleased with my performance so far." "Good, but this can't continue indefinitely. Commander Grace Sullivan is leading a team to assess options for extracting you without causing a diplomatic incident. They'll arrive in 3 days. John felt an unexpected reluctance at the thought of leaving. "Sir, I'm not sure that's necessary yet. I'm learning a lot about Zitharian culture." "This could be valuable for Earth Alliance," Foster frowned. "Your primary duty is to Earth Alliance, Lieutenant. Remember that." After the call ended, Lisa studied John's face. "You don't want to leave, do you?" John hesitated. "It's complicated. There's something happening here that I don't fully understand. I need more time." Before Lisa could respond, Myriotal entered the room. The young scholar's skin flashed with urgent patterns of green and yellow. "Regent, there has been an incident," Myriotal said. "Darjvin has publicly challenged your legitimacy. He demands you undergo the Trial of Depths to prove your worthiness." "The Trial of Depths?" John asked. "What is that?" Mirial's skin darkened with concern. "An ancient ritual rarely invoked? The challenger claims only a true regent chosen by the eternal tide could survive the deepest trench of our oceans." Lisa stepped forward. "That's ridiculous." "John is human. He can't survive deep ocean pressures." "The challenge has been made publicly," Myriotal said. "To refuse would support Darjvin's claim that you are not the true regent." John thought about the specialist team coming to extract him. If he refused the challenge, Darjvin might seize control before then, potentially damaging relations between Earth and Zithar. "I need to know more about this trial," John said. "Is there somewhere we can research it?" Myriotal led John and Lisa to an ancient library deep within the palace. The room was partially filled with water, and illuminated manuscripts rested on pedestals above the water's surface. The walls were covered with glowing symbols that shifted and changed as they watched. "These are the ancient records," Myriotal explained. "Few Zitharians study them now. I am one of the scholars who maintain this knowledge." As Myriotal searched for information about the Trial of Depths, John noticed that the symbols on the wall seemed familiar. He realized with shock that he could understand some of them, despite never having studied the ancient Zitharian language. "Here," Myriotal said, placing an old manuscript on a dry reading table. "The Trial of Depths was last performed 3 cycles ago, when Regent Kolvish was challenged." John and Lisa leaned over the manuscript. To John's surprise, he could read parts of it directly, without translation. "The challenger survived," John said, pointing to a passage, "but lost the challenge because he could not communicate with the Ancient One? What does that mean?" Myriotal looked at John with surprise. "You can read the ancient script?" John realized his mistake. "No, I was just guessing based on the pictures." Myriotal seemed unconvinced but continued explaining. "The trial requires the challenge to descend to the abyssal trench, the deepest part of our oceans. There, they must commune with the Ancient One, a creature that has lived in the depths since before recorded history. If the Ancient One recognizes the challenger as worthy, they return with a token of recognition." "And if they fail?" Lisa asked. They do not return, Miriatal said simply. Lisa turned to John. This is insane. You can't do this. It's obviously a trap. I may not have a choice, John replied. How long do I have to prepare? The challenge must be answered within 3 days. Miriatal said that the same timeline as the arrival of Commander Sullivan's team, John thought. Not a coincidence. That evening, after informing Captain Foster about the challenge, John stood alone on a balcony overlooking the ocean. The blue patterns on his arms had spread, now reaching his shoulders. When he touched them, images flashed. Through his mind, ocean currents, pressure zones, and maps of the deep trenches. He heard footsteps behind him and quickly covered his arms. You don't have to hide them from me, Miriatal said, stepping onto the balcony. I know what is happening to you. John sighed and pushed up his sleeves, revealing the glowing patterns. What is this? The royal technology is changing you, Miriatal said. It happens to all regents, though never before to a human. Why didn't you warn me? Miriatal's skin flickered with apologetic patterns. Some things must be experienced, not explained. But there is more you should know. She glanced around to ensure they were alone. I am part of a group that believes. The ancient prophecies have been misinterpreted. The one about the star-touched regent especially. What does the prophecy actually say? John asked. It speaks of one who comes from beyond the sky to either lead Zithar to unprecedented prosperity or complete destruction. Mirial's skin darkened. Dardvin and his followers believe your arrival fulfills the destruction prophecy. That is why they challenge you. John thought about the strange dreams and the spreading patterns on his skin. And what do you believe? I believe there is much in our history that has been forgotten or hidden, Miriatal said. The royal bloodline has always had ... unusual characteristics. Different from most Zitharians. Different how? Small genetic differences, like your own. Miriatal moved closer. I have studied the ancient records more thoroughly than most. There are hints that Zitharian royalty has always had partial non-Zitharian DNA. John stared at her. Are you suggesting there was contact between humans and Zitharians before official first contact? I am suggesting you should accept the trial of depths, Miriatal said. The answers you seek lie in the abyssal trench. The changes happening to you, they may be preparing you for the trial. Later that night, John met with Lisa in his chambers. The captain forbids you from taking this trial, Lisa said firmly. It's too dangerous. Commander Sullivan's team will be here in 3 days. By then it might be too late, John argued. If I refuse the challenge, Darjvin gains power. And there's something else. He rolled up his sleeves to show the glowing patterns, Lisa gasped. John, what's happening to you? The royal technology is changing me, he explained. That I'm having dreams or memories that aren't my own. Miriatal thinks there might be an ancient connection between humans and Zitharians. All the more reason to get you back to the horizon for proper medical examination, Lisa insisted. John shook his head. I need to know the truth. I'm accepting the challenge. Lisa looked at him for a long moment. Then I'm coming with you as far as I can. Darjvin won't allow that. I don't care what Darjvin allows, Lisa said firmly. You're not facing this alone, John smiled, grateful for her support. Outside the window, the lights of the underwater city twinkled like stars. Somewhere in the dark waters beyond the abyssal trench waited with its secrets. John touched the glowing patterns on his arms and felt the ocean calling to him. The day of the trial of depths arrived with stormy skies. John stood on a ceremonial platform at the edge of the abyssal shelf, the last underwater plateau before the ocean dropped into darkness. A crowd of Zitharians gathered to witness the challenge, their skin patterns shifting with excitement and tension. Darjvin approached, his skin glowing with confident red patterns. The false regent will fail the trial, he announced to the crowd. The eternal tide rejects this alien usurper. John remained silent. The blue patterns had spread across his entire body now, glowing beneath his ceremonial robes. He felt strangely calm despite the danger ahead. High Priest Zelmora stepped forward with a crystal vessel. The challenged and challenger will both descend to the Ancient One. Whoever returns with the token of recognition will be confirmed as the true regent. Lisa stood nearby with Miriatile, her face tight with worry. "Be careful," she called to John. "Remember your training." John nodded. For the past 2 days, Miriatile had taught him Zitharian swimming techniques and what little was known about the abyssal trench. But no amount of training could fully prepare a human for the crushing depths ahead. "The trial begins," Zelmora announced, striking a crystalline gong. John and Darjvin dove into the water. The Zitharian moved with natural grace, quickly disappearing into the depths. John followed more slowly. Conscious of conserving his strength for the long descent, the special breathing apparatus provided for the trial filtered oxygen from the water like Zitharian gills. It felt strange, but effective. As John swam deeper, the light from the surface faded. The blue patterns on his skin began to glow brighter, providing a soft illumination around him. Darjvin was far ahead now, a dim shape in the darkness below. John continued his steady descent, guided by an instinct he didn't understand. The strange dreams and memories that had plagued him now seemed to help, showing him currents to avoid and the safest path downward. The pressure increased as he descended, but John felt less discomfort than he expected. The changes to his body seemed to include adaptation to deep water. His muscles worked efficiently, and his vision adjusted to see in the dim light. Hours passed as John descended deeper than any human had ever gone without a submersible. The abyssal trench opened below him, a vast dark canyon in the ocean floor. There was no sign of Darjvin now. As John swam into the trench, the water grew colder. Strange creatures with bioluminescent organs drifted past, unlike any he had seen before. They seemed curious about him, some even following for short distances before returning to the darkness. Finally, John reached what felt like the bottom of the trench. His skin patterns glowed brightly now, illuminating a strange formation ahead. At first, he thought it was a natural rock formation, but as he got closer, he realized it was artificial, a structure of some kind. The structure was massive and clearly ancient, covered in layers of sediment and sea life. But sections were still visible, revealing a design that looked nothing like Zitharian architecture. In fact, it looked oddly familiar. With shock, John recognized elements that resembled human construction, straight lines, and right angles rarely used in Zitharian buildings. This was a spacecraft of some kind, buried in the deepest part of the ocean. Movement caught his eye. Darjvin was there, trying to force open what appeared to be an entrance. The Zitharian turned and saw John, his skin flashing with surprise. And anger. John approached cautiously. Darjvin gestured aggressively, clearly warning John to stay back. But before either could act, the ground beneath them trembled. Sediment swirled up around them, momentarily blinding both. When the water cleared, John found himself facing an enormous creature unlike anything he had ever seen. It resembled a massive ray, but with tentacle-like appendages and complex patterns of bioluminescence across its body. The Ancient One had arrived. The creature's consciousness touched John's mind like a gentle wave. Images and feelings flowed between them: curiosity, recognition, and ancient memories. John realized the creature was telepathic, communicating directly with his thoughts. The Ancient One showed John images of the past Earth vessels arriving on Zithar thousands of years before official first contact. Human explorers meeting with Zitharians, sharing knowledge and eventually genetics. The royal bloodline established with traits from both species to maintain the connection to the technology left behind. John understood now why the royal crown had chosen him. His DNA contained markers similar to those of the ancient human explorers. Activated by the crown's technology, Darjvin tried to approach the Ancient One, but the creature ignored him. Instead, one tentacle-like appendage reached toward the crashed spacecraft and retrieved a small object. The Ancient One presented it to John, a token made of the same crystalline material as the royal crown, the token of recognition. Darjvin's skin flashed with rage. He lunged at John, trying to grab the token. John dodged, his movements unnaturally quick and precise in the water. The changes to his body had enhanced his reflexes as well. The Ancient One moved between them, its massive body blocking Darjvin. A pulse of energy emanated from the creature, and Darjvan went rigid before slowly floating upward. Carried by a current created by the Ancient One. John looked at the spacecraft again. The Ancient One showed him one final image, a holographic recording device inside that contained the complete history of human Zitharian contact. The truth that had been forgotten over thousands of years. With the token in hand, John began the long ascent back to the surface. 3 days later, John stood in the great hall of the palace. Lisa was beside him, along with Commander Grace Sullivan, who had arrived with the Earth Alliance team during his trial. On his other side stood Miriatul and Grand Minister Veshla. The hall was filled with Zitharians, all watching in amazement as a holographic display showed the history recorded by the ancient explorers. For thousands of years, humans and Zitharians shared knowledge and friendship, John explained. The royal bloodline was established to maintain that connection, with genetic markers from both species. That is why the crown chose me. I carry similar markers to those ancient humans. Commander Sullivan looked stunned. This rewrites our understanding of human history. We had no idea there was contact this far back. Darjvan stood at the edge of the hall, his challenge defeated. His skin now showed patterns of acceptance, if not quite approval. What happens now? Lisa asked. John touched the token of recognition, which now hung around his neck alongside the royal circlet. I have discussed this with the Council and Earth Alliance. I will remain a ceremonial regent, maintaining the ancient connection, but Miriatul will serve as executive proxy for day-to-day governance. And you'll also serve as Earth's ambassador to Zithar, Commander Sullivan added. John nodded. The blue patterns on his skin had stabilized, giving him a slightly Zitharian appearance while remaining clearly human. The changes had given him abilities no human had before: the ability to breathe underwater for extended periods, resistance to pressure, and a telepathic connection to the Ancient One and the planet's oceans. This is just the beginning, John said, looking out at the gathered Zitharians. The ancient records suggest our species have crossed paths with others as well. We may share more connections throughout the galaxy than we ever realized. Lisa moved closer to John. I've requested a permanent position with the diplomatic mission here, she said quietly. If you're staying, I'd like to stay too. John smiled, feeling the gentle mental touch of the Ancient One far below in the abyssal trench. The creature had shown him glimpses of possibilities, other worlds, other species, and a future of cooperation rather than conflict. A new chapter begins, he said, taking Lisa's hand. For both our peoples. Outside the palace, the oceans of Zithar continued their eternal tide, carrying the combined legacy of two species who had found each other twice across the vast reaches of time and space.